It is 1:50 by my time in Saskatchewan, so it would be 3:50 in Ontario. And we will now start the meeting, and I welcome you all to the 29th meeting of the House Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. The committee is meeting today at, as I said, 1:50, or I guess I should say 3:50 Ontario time. We will hear from the COVID-19 Vaccine Task Force as part of the committee's study of government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and consider our report on the NUCTEC security equipment contract following. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Interpretation in this video conference will work very much like in a regular committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen to either use the floor, the English, or the French. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you're ready to speak, you can click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. To raise a point of order during the meeting, committee members should ensure their microphone is unmuted and say point of order to get the chair's attention. The clerk and analysts are participating in the meeting virtually today. If you need to speak with them during the meeting, please email them through the committee email addresses. The clerk can also be reached on his mobile phone. For those people who are participating in the committee room, please note that masks are required unless seated and when physical distancing is not possible. I will now invite the witnesses to make their opening statements. And Ms. Langley, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, and I'm honored to be speaking with you today as one of the co-chairs of the COVID-19 Vaccine Task Force. I know I speak for my colleague and I, Dr. Mark Lavonen, and all members of the task force when we say that we've been very privileged to be able to serve in this way during this pandemic. We were also honored to speak with your colleagues on the Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology on February 18th, and I went and presented to the Standing Committee on Health on February 26th. I'll start off by speaking briefly about our work on vaccines before turning the floor over to my co-chair, Mark, who will talk about the work we've been doing on biomanufacturing. The task force includes 10 external to government members and 4 ex officio members who are senior public servants. We are from various fields, including immunology, vaccinology, vaccine development, biomanufacturing, and commercialization. We all serve as volunteers, of course. Our overarching mission is to provide the best scientific advice based on available evidence to government with a goal of securing safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines for Canadians as quickly as possible. This has been our overarching mission. While each of us has taken on the substantial commitment to serve the government in this way, we do not make decisions. This is the purview of ministers, notably the Minister of Health, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, to whom we report and send our advice, and the Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Overall, the task force recommended a portfolio approach to procure vaccines, balancing different technology platforms to increase our chances of securing a safe and effective vaccine, and to mitigate the risk of some candidates not making it through to commercialization or of supply chain disruptions, which we anticipated from the very beginning, which might result in production or delivery delays. When we started our work in June of last year, we felt that after review of all the evidence, that the international vaccine candidates were significantly more advanced in their development and that they presented the most viable option for meeting this overarching goal of getting safe and effective vaccines to Canada as quickly as possible. And this is reflected in Canada's procurement strategy. We were also impressed with several of the domestic vaccine candidates being developed and were able to recommend different options for support, 10 of which have been announced by the government. Currently, the government has entered into advanced purchase agreements with 7 firms. Of these, 4 vaccine candidates have received authorization from Health Canada for use in the country, and 3 are currently in use. I'll now turn over the floor to Mark, who will speak about our work related to biomanufacturing advice.
Thank you, Joanne. And let me start by echoing the remarks of my co-chair. It's indeed a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. When the Joint Vaccine Task Force started looking at biomanufacturing, we undertook that work by forming a joint biomanufacturing subcommittee consisting of members from both the Vaccine Task Force and the Therapeutics Task Force. The subcommittee was tasked with providing advice to the government in 3 different areas. Number 1, to assess biomanufacturing projects proposed to the government under the Strategic Innovation Fund, or SIF. So far, 4 of these projects have been announced, along with the NRC's Royal Mount facility. Number 2, to develop an overall strategy to increase Canada's biomanufacturing capability. And third, to advise the government on other biomanufacturing matters related to securing COVID vaccines and therapeutics, including efforts to attract international vaccine candidates to manufacture some of their vaccines in Canada. So far, one of these projects has been announced. The Joint Biomanufacturing Subcommittee believes that strengthening Canada's biomanufacturing capacity is a key element of our COVID-19 response. This includes mobilizing and finding innovative uses for existing capacity, procuring needed equipment and inputs, expanding existing capacity in a strategic and coordinated manner, putting in place the needed biologics capacity to meet Canada's longer-term needs, and pursuing international partnerships for longer-term sustainability of the sector. In closing, I would say that it's truly been a privilege for us in the Vaccine Task Force to apply our knowledge and experience to serve Canadians, and we would be happy to answer any questions you might have related to the work of the Vaccine Task Force. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Langley and Dr. Livonen. And I apologize if I pronounce your name incorrectly. We will now go into some questions, and we'll start in our first round with 6 minutes from Mr. Paul Hughes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hello to the witnesses. My first question is for Ms. Langley. We know that you don't publish the minutes of your meetings, so I'd like to know if you've met since October.
Meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the Vaccine Task Force has met on an ongoing basis and has had meetings since October.
Okay. Vous avez parlé de quoi?
What did you talk about?
So our original overarching mission is still our main task, which is safe and effective vaccines for Canadians. The way that we execute that mission changes over time. As you know, there have been new concerns that have arisen over time, and which happens with every public health immunization program. So thinking longer term than 2021, we have been involved in those kinds of planning and recommendations to government about how we will protect Canadians as the pandemic continues and whatever trajectory it takes.
Okay.
I see. So the European Union seems to be open to considering the Sputnik and Sinopharm vaccines. Are they vaccines on your list of candidates for consideration? And have those companies approached you, or have you approached them?
Thank you. So the original portfolio has 7 candidates in it. And when we came up with those, we looked at all the vaccines that we were aware of and distilled it down to then those. On an ongoing basis, we are open to new scientific evidence about efficacy of vaccines. And when those companies come and meet with us, that is usually it is always under a confidential business approach where we can't disclose what the evidence, what the information is. But Dr. Scott Douglas may be able to speak to that better.
I might just add very briefly, Chair, that neither Sputnik nor Sinopharm have come before the committee. The 7 advanced purchase agreements do include adenovirus, two adenovirus platforms, and so the committee feels it's in good shape with a diversified platform.
Merci.
Thank you. When it comes to reports, why does the task force publish a report in the middle of the crisis, whereas the UK did so at another time? Why didn't you emulate it?
Is that directed to me, I guess?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We have been, our mandate is to advise ministers, and we have been doing that since last late spring, early summer, and that has continued to be the case. Because it's advice to ministers, my understanding, not as a public servant, is that is not in the public realm.
Okay. Pour la première fois, le Canada.
For the first time, Canada will start to receive vaccines from the Pfizer US factory rather than the Belgian factory. And we know that the vaccines arrive by aircraft. Did you recommend that Canada get supply insofar as possible from the United States rather than Europe? Was that your advice to the government?
The considerations we worked with for the procurement team, and it was always with regard to security of supply. That varied over time, and so the specifics of that would be very dependent on the particular supply problems at any point in time. And again, I would ask Scott Douglas to fill in there.
Ma question,
Well, but my question, Ms. Langley, is that at the outset, did you ask the government to look towards America, because at a couple of hundred kilometres from Canada's border, Pfizer has a factory? Was that your initial proposal to the government, or did you already know at that stage that the Americans would not make this easy for Canada?
So we were very aware, thank you for the question, we were very aware of some of the vaccine nationalism concerns that arose right from the beginning of the pandemic. And so that would have played into our recommendations, which were about, with the ultimate decision being, of course, from the government.
I would just very briefly add the Defense Procurement Act was known to us, and the restrictions that was putting upon some of the exports from American biomanufacturing producers. And so the early negotiations had always been to, as Joanne said, to ensure the highest probability that we would get access in Canada. And the Pfizer Europe negotiations were initially with Europe for that reason.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Paulus. Merci beaucoup. We'll now go to Mr. Weiler for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd also like to start by thanking Ms. Langley, Mr. Livonen, and Mr. Douglas for joining our committee meeting today. But I'd also like to thank them for their incredible service to our country, for volunteering to be part of this critically important vaccine task force. So really appreciate the work that you've been doing over the course of the last year plus, and going forward. My first question, perhaps this is best directed to Ms. Langley, is what are the factors that the vaccine task force utilized to help the government decide on which vaccine suppliers to pursue?
Thank you for your question. So we looked at kind of in the domains of technical merit, scientific merit, and supply chain. So in terms of scientific merit, there were sub-classifications. We kind of had a rubric with all those various 3 domains. Some of the vaccine platforms that arose during the COVID pandemic were very novel. And so we wanted to know all the background evidence that would support platforms like that. We looked at the ones that use platforms we were aware of and the safety and efficacy with similar platforms for other vaccines. In terms of technical merit, we looked at what the company's proposals were for clinical development and for good manufacturing practice for the whole process before you can first inject an investigational product into a human. And then lastly, the whole process for scale up and delivery, and for that, I would turn to my colleague, Mark Livonen, to describe our rubric.
I think you summarized it well, Joanne. There are a number of factors that come into consideration, and some of the earlier points that were raised. A manufacturer's credibility, their ability to comply and supply chain challenges with supply chain. Vaccines are extremely difficult to make, even the routine vaccines. So one that was so new was inevitable there'd be some supply chain issues along the way, and we took all of that into consideration in formulating our advice and providing it to the ministers.
Thank you very much for that, and kind of touching on something that Ms. Langley brought up earlier in her introduction. Did you discuss more about the possibility of producing more of these vaccines in Canada? And I was hoping you could speak a little bit more to the challenges that we have with that.
Mr. Chair, if I could take that question. So yes, we looked at it as Joanne said. We were looking to provide advice on securing safe and efficacious vaccines for Canadians as soon as possible. We looked at domestic candidates, we looked at international candidates, and we took all of that into consideration. It became fairly clear early on that the fastest vaccines for Canadians were going to be the international candidates. And so while we provided support for SIFs, Strategic Investment Fund proposals, to encourage and support the Canadian industry, it was fairly clear to us early on that the leading candidates would be the international ones. And that, of course, turned out to be the case.
And one of the things that was mentioned earlier, or one thing I'd like to know a little bit more about is what was the research and data that went into choosing the 7 vaccine candidates and approved vaccines that were decided upon? And in your opinion, is there sufficient data to make informed decisions to move ahead with those 7 vaccines and vaccine candidates, given all the different potential vaccines that were being investigated at that?
I think if you look at the task that was given to us, and we certainly all embraced it, was quite monumental. Here we were to provide advice on securing vaccines that did not exist yet. They were not licensed. They were still in the clinical trial stage. So we reviewed a lot of companies, a lot of candidate vaccines. I think there was over 200 that we had some data on, and we winnowed that list down as a task force into those that we thought were of primary interest. We invited those companies in to present to us, a number of them, and we had a back and forth. And as Joanne said in her opening comments, the capabilities of the people on this task force, I would say, are second to none in the world. And so when we engage with debate and discussion with companies, we were able to get as best we could at the heart of the data. And if you look back, you'll realize that we recommended procuring vaccines before they were actually licensed in Canada. So those 7 vaccines that we recommended, none of them had even been approved. None of them had finished clinical trials. And if we look at where we are now, the first 4 vaccines were all vaccines that we recommended, and so far it's 4 for 4.
That's a pretty good record to have. And Mr. Livonen, you mentioned one thing earlier that leads to my next question. And what role did the task force have in terms of advocating or advising, rather, in terms of where we might have promising therapeutics? Because I know we have one of the world leading COVID therapies that's been developed and now being manufactured out of Canada.
So we are the vaccines task force. There's also a therapeutics task force, and they were charged with looking at that, coming up with a therapeutic strategy. Where the two overlap in terms of biomanufacturing, we formed a joint biomanufacturing subcommittee. I chaired the Joint Biomanufacturing Subcommittee, and Joanne was on it, as were the two co-chairs of the Therapeutics Task Force and various other members of the Vaccines and Therapeutics Task Force. So we came together in the biomanufacturing area and on recommendations for biomanufacturing for both vaccines and therapeutics because of the similarities among them.
Thank you, Dr. Leobonin. We'll now go to Ms. Vignola for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much and welcome. And thank you to our witnesses for being in attendance today. Ms. Langley, in the newspapers over recent months, we've heard about the fact that Canada is the only G7 country, not the G20 or country in the world, but the only G7 country that's going to dip into the COVAX bank. Is that the case?
Thank you for your question. So the Vaccine Task Force did look at the recommendations for our involvement in COVAX, this facility to improve vaccine access around the world, to which Canada has committed quite a lot of funding. Now, your question about are we the only country, I wouldn't be the expert on that. We have made recommendations in the case of...
As I said, only G7 country.
I believe you are correct, but that is the case. Roger, am I correct about that?
Okay.
I think of the G7, that is correct. There's two streams in the COVAX. One is for self-financing, which we're a part of. We also contributed for other countries that are unable to pay for their own vaccines, and Canada being a major contributor there. And we didn't draw from that pool. We drew from the self-financing pool.
Merci.
Thank you. Recently, the Minister for Public Services and Procurement said that if Canada ended up having too many doses, and if you look at the figures, Canada does have an oversupply of doses vis-a-vis the number of inhabitants. So if Canada ends up getting too many doses, well, then those underprivileged countries might not even get an initial dose. So here's my question. Why are we dipping into the COVAX bank when we know ahead of time that we might likely to actually give back vaccines to other countries?
Thank you for the question. So the strategy during a pandemic is to go into these decisions knowing that you're at risk that some or all even of the vaccine platforms might not pan out. So when the reason for doing procuring or recommending to procure in different platforms is because that any one or two or maybe even three of those platforms, when they move into clinical trials, might not be safe or they might not be effective. So therefore, we recommended really over procurement, knowing that maybe only one would work, in which case we would have enough for every Canadian to be vaccinated adequately. From the very beginning, there was always discussion that given that we were potentially in a situation of having too many vaccines, we would want to use those for the benefit of others. That was always part of the thinking. But it was difficult to say that back in June because we had no idea that we would be in this case where so many have succeeded.
Merci.
Thank you. Very quickly, Medicago is developing its plant on the Estimoville Street, right next to my office, and it should be ready at the latest in 2024, and there's a possibility that might even be ready beforehand. But it depends on the 56 million doses that have been ordered by the Government of Canada. So why is it these 56 million doses are only potential doses at this stage and not confirmed?
Well, I think the final authorization is when it's approved by Health Canada. So all of the procurements have in them a clause that if the vaccine is never approved, we would not be using it for Canadians.
I might just add briefly to Joanne's point, Chair, that Medicago, the government of Canada has signed an advanced purchase agreement with Medicago, so there's a commitment to doing it if it does get the Health Canada approval that Joanne's talked about.
Okay, merci.
Thank you. Currently, there's a reform of CEMP. I'd like to know what the impact of that reform will be on production capacity for the future, i.e. the interest of pharmaceutical companies setting up shop here and taking part in pharmaceutical research here in Canada.
I'm not sure what the CMP. I want to be sure we understand that. It might be better for Mark to answer that.
Yeah, could you? Yes, I'd be happy to. But could you just restate the beginning of the question for me, please? Translation, I'm not sure.
Je suis désolée, je connais.
I'm sorry, I don't know what the acronym is in English, but it's actually the PMPRB, the Patented Medicine Prices Review Board.
Yeah.
Yes. So the Patent Medicine Prices Review Board. Yes, there is, as I understand, an ongoing review of that. Dealing with PMPRB and the pricing issues and so on was not part of the work of the vaccine task force. That did not enter into our discussions. And in terms of the advice that we gave and the negotiations between the government and the individual companies, any issues related to pricing and any authorizations under PMPRB would have been part of discussions between those two groups.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you, Ms. Vignola. We'll now go to Mr. Green for 6 minutes.
Thank you. And I want to pick up on the idea of patents. We've heard that the Biden administration has finally come on board. It looks like they're going to be supporting a TRIPS waiver, a waiver on patents internationally. I'm wondering, what considerations did your advisory group have on the possibility of patent waivers, and how did you account for that in your potential planning in terms of market availability and supply curves?
So if I could take that question. So when we looked at, and I'll go back to some earlier comments, when we looked at securing safe and efficacious vaccines for Canadians as soon as possible, it became clear that sourcing international potential candidates was going to be the quickest way. We very much looked at domestic candidates and, as was mentioned earlier, having some of those international companies make some agreements with Canada. If you look at the worldwide vaccine business, generally speaking, and it's the case with COVID vaccines as well, the drug substance or the bulk manufacturing, that's easier to scale up, not easier in terms of capability, but in terms of quantity. The shortfall is often in fill and finish, filling and packaging. And so the bulk drug substance gets made, but it's a bottleneck in terms of filling and packaging. So we did have discussions, and the government of Canada had discussions with companies to try to get them to establish fill and finish agreements here in Canada, and one has been announced. But in terms of doing a technology transfer, whether there is a TRIPS agreement or not, the whole process around tech transfer and transferring that to a Canadian entity and then scaling that up, it would be time consuming. It certainly wouldn't have gotten us vaccines this year. I don't think it would have gotten us vaccines next year. It is something that is being looked at as what I might call a more medium term or longer term solution for supplying Canadians with pandemic vaccines sourced here. But they weren't going to be part of the immediate response. And they certainly are being very much looked at, as I said, for the intermediate to longer term.
Were there any domestic producers that had the capability, the facilities to manufacture the technology that had been released?
No, so we have vaccine capabilities, manufacturing capabilities in Canada. We have Sanofi Pasteur, the former Connaught Labs, which has a significant presence in Toronto. It makes vaccines for tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis, combines it with polio and Haemophilus influenza B, and exports it, supplies Canada and exports it for the world.
But would that, if I could, would that have been suitable? You know, I'm glad you brought up Connaught. $500 million investment in Connaught. we're looking at potentially $8 billion in expenditures for our vaccines in this response. Of course, I'm not interested in what the cost per unit price is at the moment, but I'm remiss to note all the money that's being sunk into the private sector, and yet we don't have any equity. We don't have any nationalized domestic production timelines on the horizon, and it feels like announcement after announcement is throwing money into the private sector. So I know, if I'm to understand correctly, sir, that you have a relationship through you, Mr. Chair, past relationship with Sanofi. In your opinion, had we stayed the course with Cannot Labs, is there a scenario in mind? I know this is 2020 now. This is hindsight. But would there be a scenario in mind where a national producer could have been ahead of the curve given the amount of money that we've invested in the research and development of a lot of this technology?
Yeah, so there'd be a lot to unpack in that story. If I could just come to the current one, the fact that we are using mRNA technologies, which quite frankly, up until the time of this pandemic, lots of time and effort been put into them, but there'd not been a product commercialized. So we did not have facilities with large scale RNA. I think it's very fortunate for the world that BioNTech and Moderna, and then BioNTech with Pfizer, were able to have these facilities in place so they could pivot them. With some respect, or in some respect, that's really happenstance. And as they say, happenstance for the good fortune of the world. There were not facilities sitting idly by ready to do that. And in the case of our existing facilities, including GSK's flu facility in Quebec, they're making vaccines against existing diseases and would not be able to have been pivoted quickly.
And so you have it through you, Mr. Chair, as a medium-term horizon. In your opinion, knowing the story of Cannot, and I'm remiss, like, if this was World War II, I would think that the government would have nationalized Stelco here in Hamilton, and they would have got to the business of producing in a war-type effort. In the medium term, do you think that there's a horizon where we do have nationalized public production of life-saving vaccines?
I don't know that it's nationalized. I think what seems to be happening in the way we've addressed this pandemic, there's been unbelievable and unprecedented cooperation between industry, government, academia, health authorities. I mean, we have compressed what would normally be 10 plus years to develop a vaccine. 4 to 5 years was the fastest ever for Ebola and mumps into less than a year. Unheard of, unprecedented. And it's only through that cooperation and collaboration. And going forward, it's the investments that the government is making in these private sector companies, and then collaborating with them and partnering with them and making agreements, putting in place contract manufacturing organizations. One would presume that those kind of agreements will be put in place, and that's how we'll address the demands in the medium and the immediate term and the longer term.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you, Mr. Green. We've now finished our first round, and we will now go to the second round of questioning, and we will start with Mr. McCauley for 5 minutes.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Witnesses, thanks very much. Excuse me for butchering your name, Mr. Levin, and you were right. We are very fortunate that those companies came up with those vaccines. I want to focus on Providence Therapeutics, please. Obviously, they've been in the news a lot. Their CEO was commenting about having to leave Canada due to lack of support. Was this one of the vaccines, the potential ones that you examined?
Yes, we have.
And if so, like, how far along are they, and why did they not get the support that they're stating that they believe they should be getting?
So we have met with Providence a couple times. We've discussed them at a number of our meetings. They've made some proposals to us. They have received funding from NRC IRAP, $5 million. They also received some funding from
we gave Loblaws triple that to buy fridges. So 5 million is not much. But I want to get back, like, they wrote a letter to the Prime Minister saying they could start doing 50 million doses within a year if they had gotten the proper support. Do you believe that's correct?
Well, if I could continue. So the $5 million was to help them advance phase 1 clinical trials. I understand they are in phase 1 clinical trial now. When they get results from that, that will be meaningful. The way vaccine development works is you do phase 1 clinical
Right.
trials for
No, I'm
safety.
aware of that.
And so the point would be is I would think that if they have effective phase 1 results, move into phase 2, they can always come back for funding. But the companies that we funded and we're looking at were in phase 3 and were licensed. So if they're
Where
in
are they
phase
down the
1
road compared to Medicago?
Medicago, I believe, Joanne, you could correct me, phase 2 about to start phase 3.
They're in phase 3.
They're in phase
Yeah.
3.
And they have a plant they're building.
And Providence is in phase 1.
Yeah, so timeline, what is the difference? 2 months, 6 months, ballparkish?
I'll defer to Joanne, who's an expert in the field.
And again, a ballpark's fine.
Yeah, so if they had product that they could put into a phase 3 trial, the
No,
pace,
I mean between phase 1 to catch up to phase 3.
well, it does depend on having enough product that you can use. And you do need generally several months. You need a month after your last dose. But I think Dr. Scott Douglas could speak to the support that was given to Providence.
No, that's fine. I'm just curious, like if they're in phase 1 right now, is it feasible to say how long it would take to get to phase 3, or there's just too many variables involved?
It is hard to say it with exactitude, but
Put a
once
ballpark.
they, oh gosh,
2 months, 6 years type thing, like just
No,
give me a
not-
rough ballpark.
if they had full support, they could potentially move to phase 2 with the 28-day results from their phase 1.
Okay.
That would be early. So, I mean, they could do phase 3 potentially if their phase 2 went well next fall.
Okay, with
Fall to
Medicago,
winter.
right? With Medicago, well, Providence is saying they can produce, if they get the right support after they get phase 3, 50 million a year. Is that practical? Like you mentioned, Medicago would be 2024.
Well, that's the Quebec facility that Medicago would be up and running. They do have a plant in North Carolina.
Right.
So that's why they can commit to providing doses earlier.
Okay. Can I ask what the committee is advising regarding the booster?
So the committee has considered whether there would be a need for boosters for ongoing vaccine supply. That is not clear, I would say, as a scientific consensus, where people are preparing for both option for several trajectories, that there would be a need for ongoing yearly boosters, or that there might be that the virus might attenuate and only certain populations would need to have new vaccination, or it could fade away. But you have to prepare for every possibility.
Okay.
The worst case scenario needing ongoing vaccine supply.
So you mentioned, well, not you, but one of the witnesses mentioned 4 for 4, which is fantastic for the ones you recommended, have been approved. Like, are we recommending then of those 4 to start looking at or procuring boosters from those 4, or we're not there yet, or waiting for more data?
So that is being considered. A booster vaccine would generally be a qualitatively a different vaccine. And so there are regulatory considerations, and one can't just make a recommendation based on the fact of the previous vaccine working. But all of those aspects are being considered.
Great.
Thank you,
And
Mr. McCauley, and thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
We now go to Mr. Kazmierczuk for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to take this opportunity just to recognize the tremendous work of Mr. Levanen in founding the Sanofi Biogenius Challenge and helping to nurture the next generation of our scientists and researchers. And I can tell you that in 2013, we had the pleasure of introducing one of our students to the Biogenius Challenge, and she is now a doctoral researcher at Ottawa Research Institute. So I just wanted to give you a tip of the hat for your tremendous work here. To date, we've had about 17 million vaccines delivered to provinces and territories from 4 authorized suppliers. Can you, Mr. Levanen, just describe again for us this achievement for those folks that are maybe tuning in outside and maybe they just need a little bit of context here? Can you just describe for us this achievement for Canada?
First of all, thank you very much for the comments. Sorry, can you just reiterate briefly the achievement that you?
just the fact that we've been able to deliver, 17 million vaccines to
Right.
provinces and territories to date. Many more on the horizon.
Right.
And again, we have 4 authorized suppliers that have delivered to date.
Yeah.
In such a short time frame, which is basically 12 months.
Yes. So thank you for the question. I mean, it is unheard of. It's unprecedented. I don't know that any of us thought it would be done that quickly, and thank goodness it has, because other measures have been challenging. So as I said, typically a vaccine would take 10 plus years to develop. Fastest ever was 4 to 5 years for mumps and Ebola. I guess a year ago, when I was contemplating the fact that this was on us and we had not had a task force, but I was getting involved with some discussions, to think that we could have something in 2 years would have been miraculous. That it's under a year is just unbelievable. Everything has gone right. They've used a brand new technology that's never been tried before, RNA vaccines, and it's turned out to be wonderfully successful. The viral vectors have also been successful. We have had some viral vector vaccines, and there's still the protein subunit, the more traditional vaccines, coming down the course. The fact that they've been licensed, approved, we've gotten them into Canadians' arms, other countries have. When you look at vaccines and vaccinology, as unfortunate as COVID-19 and as devastating it has been in terms of vaccinology, it's been quite a year in terms of success, and it will bode very well for the future. So it's an amazing feat that we have these vaccines. As I said before, there's never been a product commercialized with RNA vaccines before. They've been working at it for 10 years, 20 years, and everything has come together. And there's been no shortcuts taken in terms of the steps. There's been shortcuts taken in terms of the time to do them. And all of the steps, a number of them have been done in parallel. Health Canada has worked to do rolling submissions. It's been an incredible cooperation among companies. And you've seen some companies who are competitors working together. It really has been quite something.
So you've answered part of my next question, but how is this experience, this unfortunate experience of COVID, how is it changing the landscape in Canada in terms of biomanufacturing? How do you see it shaping out?
So I think the first point I would make is there has been awareness that we have some challenges with biomanufacturing. We weren't ready for this pandemic. We have lagged behind. There's been a number outside of GSK and Sanofi Pasteur's vaccine campuses. There tends to be a number of companies, but they're small. They're small scale companies compared to other jurisdictions around the world. So now investments are going into them to scale them up. One of the points I made is we wanted to mobilize existing capacity. And quite frankly, that was a real learning experience to realize what is out there, to get these companies together, working together. The investments are being made. So I think it does bode well for biomanufacturing in the future. The other point I would make is, what kind of biomanufacturing do you have in place? Some of the traditional vaccines like tetanus and diphtheria and pertussis made in large scale fermentation and so on, that's not the way of RNA vaccines. It's a different technology. So it's a little bit to paraphrase the old Wayne Gretzky comment. It's not skate where the puck is, but skate where the puck will be. And that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of biomanufacturing. So we now need to make investments now, thinking about what will it look like in 5 years. And that is being taken into consideration. As an example, making sure it's flexible so you can pivot from one technology to another. All of that has been taken into consideration in our discussions with the companies, in our advice to the government, and in the negotiations of contracts.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Mr. Kazmierczak. We will now go to Ms. Vignola for 2.5 minutes.
It's so short, 2.5 minutes. Gee whiz. Well, I'll be very quick then. So we talked about the extent to which it takes time to develop a vaccine. It takes money too, a significant amount of money. It's not all companies that can pull that money together. It takes 15 to 20 years. They need the technology, etc., etc. Now, we're aware in Quebec there is a Quebec strategy of life sciences which is mushrooming up when it comes to horizontal research. It's burgeoning. There are a number of partners, not just mega pharmaceutical companies. Now, Ms. Langley, is your task task force studying that strategy to see how it might apply in Canada?
Thank you so much for your question. And knowing that you only have 2.5 minutes and that Mark's going to be able to answer with regard to biomanufacturing, I'll turn to him.
Well, Quebec certainly is a hotbed of biomanufacturing and life sciences. There are others across the country, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, out east in Halifax. And I think there's an opportunity here across the board to coordinate and make sure people work together across all our reactions to pandemic. And so I think that the Quebec and the cooperation among those various geographic areas is paramount. And I think this will serve and drive the need to do that more in the future.
Merci.
Thank you. I'll just to see if I have any time left, but you said Mr. Casey, the CEO of Biotechnic, said that there is very little mRNA manufacturing, and Canada is completely absent when it comes to that manufacturing. What would we have to do in Canada to have a presence on the world stage in terms of manufacturing mRNA vaccines?
So first of all, a lot of the technology related to mRNA vaccines and mRNA generally has come from the Vancouver area, the University of British Columbia. There's a number of companies involved with lipid nanoparticles, which are an important way of encasing the RNA that are present, as well as other companies. So that is very, very much there. And the investments that are being made, a number of them are being made in RNA, mRNA capabilities, such as precision nanosystems in Vancouver. As we look at some of the other investments that provided advice on some of the other contract development and manufacturing organizations, we've looked at, do they have RNA technology? Will they be able to pivot in that direction? So the investments that are being made now are included, RNA is included in those areas of investment.
Thank you, Doctor. And I do have a heart, Ms. Ignola. I gave you an extra 10 seconds there. So we'll now go to Mr. Green for 2.5 minutes.
Hearing the testimony, is it safe to say then that viral vector technologies or based vaccines are kind of done? Is the competition between the two over?
I can start with that. Thank you for the question. It's a very good question. And I think I would say that viral vector vaccines do have a place, but every vector is not identical. So there are a range of, there's vesicular stomatitis, there's adenovirus, there's different types of adenovirus, and I don't think we can put them all in the same bucket. They may not all have the same efficacy or safety concerns. And so at this point, I wouldn't honestly say that they are done at all. That
The reason why I bring that up is
learn.
because both AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, as I'm to understand, are viral vectors. We do have plants and capacity here in Canada to do that, and we now see the Biden administration waiving patents. I'm going to go back to that question. We're watching the profits of these major pharmaceutical companies tank in the stock market today, and I think it's criminal that they profited in the ways they did during this crisis anyways. So understanding that the patents are being waived, if there's the opportunity for us to take this technology and apply it here locally and domestically in the medium term, could we do that with the existing viral vector technology that we have?
I think Roger would be best placed to answer that.
I would be happy to speak to it.
Oh, would you? Okay, sure.
Yeah. If I understand the question correctly, so there are investments being made in viral vector capacity here as well, and so that could be an opportunity as well down the road to produce them here. But in terms of viral vector vaccines, those also may be available for other parts of the world. So as you were suggesting and Joanne was saying, the RNA vaccines are present here. We've had a role for the viral vectors vaccines for sure. What that role may be in the future, it may be more available or more amenable or more desirable for other parts of the globe. But certainly we do have viral vector capability here in some cases. And if there was a need or desire to
did the committee ever consider a nationalized program, or was it always just solely focused on private sector profiteering off of this vaccine
Maybe, Mark, I could just mention a couple of key investments, Mr. Chair, that were made in the public domain. One was in the National Research Council Royal Mount facility, where construction of a whole new biologics manufacturing center is underway. And the second is in Vito, which is a public sector investment attached to the University of Saskatchewan, where there's been very significant investment as well, both in manufacturing and in vaccine candidates there.
Thank you, Doctor. And now we'll go to Mr. Paul Hughes for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to continue with the questions about the vaccine candidates. We saw this week that the National Immunisation Advisory Committee clearly came out and said that the mRNA vaccines are the best for Canadians. So as a task force, are you going to recommend that the government do not renew contracts with AstraZeneca for the next and upcoming contracts? Because we know we'll need new doses next year. The same is true. My question also applies to Johnson & Johnson.
I could start with that one. Thank you for the question. So as we plan for subsequent years of the pandemic, if it does continue for subsequent years, considerations will be a little different. The viral vectored vaccines played a marvelous role in being able to scale up quickly and provide disease control early in the pandemic. Whether they will be the best ones as the pandemic evolves, will be, I think, a different conversation, and that is certainly part of our discussions.
Well, currently, the experience we've had with the various vaccines, we sort of know what we need in terms of the virus and the variants. Now, turning it to these various types of vaccines, last February you said that, well, the CanSino was one of the vaccine candidates that was being considered, and yet in May these doses went from China. So at what point did you learn of that?
So the task force wasn't constituted till June, so it wasn't involved in considering anything before that time.
But personally, you were in Dalhousie University, so you were aware of what was occurring and you worked with CanSino, didn't you?
So, yes, so I'm based at the Canadian Centre for Vaccinology at Dalhousie University, and we do research in vaccines early in their development and do a lot of phase 1 trials, mainly for Canadian candidates, but for other ones. And so we had a collaboration with the National Research Council and CanSino to look at the clinical development of a potential vaccine for the pandemic.
Well, I remember we talked at the industry committee a few weeks ago, a month ago, about CanSino, and the task force hadn't been struck when the government and the Department of Industry decided to have dealings with CanSino. The task force was created later, but the government, even at that time, knew there was an issue with CanSino. So when you took up your post and the time it took to get settled in, those negotiations had already started with Pfizer and Moderna, or was it your recommendations that led to that occurring?
I'm not sure I understand the question entirely,
Maybe
but I can just... Okay,
so
right.
I could... Okay, go ahead, Roger.
Well, let me rephrase my question. At the start of the pandemic, the government decided to have dealings with CanSino, and your task force hadn't been created at that point. Thereafter, we found out there was a problem with CanSino. Your task force was created in June. You started to have your initial meetings. But at that stage, the government had already started negotiations with Pfizer and Moderna. So with you and your team, did you make a recommendation in that direction?
So if I could answer that, Roger, because I think it's just that. So when our task force started, there were discussions with CanSino. We did discuss CanSino, and after the agreements were already in place, they were marching down the path. but early on in our discussions, we were concerned about the delay in samples coming to Canada. And so we did provide some advice to the government around CanSino and what they should do in that regard. In terms of Moderna and Pfizer, we met with them and we provided advice to the government. And the task force was announced on August 5th. And the same time the government announced the task force, I believe, is when they announced the agreements with Pfizer and Moderna based on the advice of the task force.
Thank you, Mr. Paulus. You have 5 seconds. Okay, thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Joanne, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank all the witnesses for being here. Whether it's through Ms. Langley or Mr. Levonen, I want to go in the same vein as my colleague, Mr. Paulus, with regards to just the timing of vaccines. I mean, we've heard often critics saying that we were one of the last countries to sign contracts with Pfizer or Moderna. Was that the case to your knowledge?
To our knowledge, we gave advice to the government of Canada. The government of Canada then made agreements with those companies and announced it. I remember a particular evening where there was some concerns about that expressed about Canada's ability to our timing of our contracts, and I think it was actually the chairman or CEO of Moderna who appeared on Canadian television to assure Canadians that the Canadian government was at the front of the line for supply of Moderna vaccine.
Okay. And just in terms of, I know, again, my colleague touched on what may happen in 2022, 2023. I think there's still some uncertainty on how long these vaccines will be efficient in our bodies and continue to work. So Canada, as recently as 3 weeks ago or a month ago almost now, the Minister of PSPC announced that she signed contracts with Pfizer, I believe, for 30 million doses in 2022, 35 in 2023, and then 100 million option, I think, in the future. Do you know how many countries have been signing those booster contracts in terms with Pfizer, for instance, or with any other companies down the line for 2022, 23, 24, and so on?
I don't think we don't know that. I will make 2 comments that when the minister announced that, she did say based on advice from the vaccine task force. We were involved in that advice. And over the course of our discussions, we have met with our counterparts in the UK, in New Zealand, in Australia. We've had discussions with similar groups, not similar groups, but in Germany and France and so on. And it has been somewhat remarkable how there's been a similar approach in terms of the portfolio approach and the companies that we've been working with. There's a fair degree of overlap among them. And so one might anticipate they've been doing the same.
Thank you. And we know that, I mean, I can name the company. Pfizer has done an extremely great job at fulfilling its contract obligations and also surpassing its contract's obligation. When the task force made that analysis, and I think you touched on supply chain disruptions and making sure that they can ramp up. How do you analyze that from a task force perspective with regards to making sure that companies can now honor their commitments?
So early on, when we were doing our rubric and we were looking at the assessment, supply chain and the reliability of the supply chain played a very large role. We're fortunate to have some people who've been involved in manufacturing, into science, vaccinology, immunology, virology. A number of people have been involved with supply chain. The vaccine business, from a manufacturing perspective, is extremely difficult in normal days. And so this was just exacerbating it. And frankly, we did look at the robustness of the supply chain. We did have thoughts about American nationalism. And so we did look at the European supply chains. What were the companies that worked with these suppliers what were the underlying supply chains like, and what were those companies like? And we did make qualitative judgments on that and assessments of that in providing our recommendations. So the quality of the supply chain, in many other industries, the supply chain is fairly routine. It is not in any sorts of vaccines, and frankly, I know we've had our issues, and there's been disappointments, and 2 weeks delay. People have focused on that, and rightly so, because of the nature of COVID-19. But in the scheme of vaccine supply chains, things have gone remarkably well.
Right, and I think I've only got about 20 seconds, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of you for the service that you've provided to Canada. So thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much. And with that, we are now basically at 4:52 Ottawa time, and I'd like to thank the witnesses. You said you committed to an hour, and we appreciate that. So Dr. Langley, Dr. Levonen, and Dr. Scott Douglas, thank you very much for being with us today, and we greatly appreciate that.
Thank
All
you
the
so
best.
much.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Bye now.
Bye.
So with that said, now our public portion of the meeting is now complete, and we'll proceed to the in-camera portion of the meeting. When I suspend the meeting, the technical staff will end this part of the Zoom meeting. And as such, members cannot remain logged into this meeting. You will have to go back and re-enter, and using the passcode that we had sent to you or was sent to you by the clerk. And with that said, I will suspend the meeting, and we'll reconvene in a couple of minutes.